Alright guys,
I'm Dan.
and I'm Andy.
Welcome to Game Couch.
Right, I'm dying, by the way. This is the day after Halloween when we're recording this. So he's hungover. I'm full of cold, so I didn't get to enjoy myself. So I'm bitter. He's upset. So we'll see how this goes.
This week we're going to be taking a look at Medal of Honor Warfighter, sequel to the 2010 reboot of Medal of Honor.
Here's a quick rundown of the game before we get to any spoilers, and there is a big spoiler, so keep an eye out for it.
A big spoiler if you're a fan of the previous game. It's an improvement on the previous one.
It's a brilliant use of the Frostbite 2 engine.
More emotional plot, has a bit more punch than the previous game, but it still unfortunately isn't good enough to write home about.
Gameplay feels nice and tight with a surprising amount of variation, to be honest.
It also has a decent class-based multiplayer.
Shall we dive right in?
Yep. Back in 2010, Danger Close released Medal of Honor, a reboot of the World War II shooter series now set in modern war zones based on real-life special operations missions with consultations from genuine Tier 1 operators. In all fairness, Medal of Honor wasn't a bad game, but it wasn't great, and it also had the misfortune of being released at the same year as the biggest selling Call of Duty game, Black Ops. And it kind of fell into obscurity because of its largely disinteresting plot and uninspired gameplay. It still sold enough to get itself a sequel, and Warfighter certainly cranks it up a notch, but it still doesn't quite make it as a truly great shooter.
We start off by getting reintroduced to the characters from the first game, 3 Delta Force operatives known as Preacher, Mother and Voodoo, in a mission that they're on to sabotage a black market deal. During the mission though, they blow up a truck that's filled with the high explosive PETN, and this results in a giant explosion which destroys the entire dockyard. Here we're led through the Middle East in a hunt for a terrorist leader and mastermind known as the Cleric. This plot is fairly interesting for a short while, but becomes a bit convoluted and just ends up being padded and completely ignorable by the end of things.
To the game's credit, it does try and have more of an emotional side to the story alongside the main plot of hunting for the Cleric. It tells the personal story of Preacher, who we actually learn is called Thomas, and his wife and child, and the failing marriage, primarily because of his job. And the sequence in which he thinks they've both been killed in suicide bombings does make your heart skip quite a few beats. It actually kind of reminds us of the film Act of Valor, which if you haven't seen you should, because it's surprisingly very good. Back to Warfighter though, the sequence that sort of has the biggest emotional hit is during my mother's funeral. Yes, mother dies. I'm not going to tell you how, but it's one of the biggest plot points in the story. And it's followed by a tribute to soldiers still fighting in real-world war zones. It actually gave us a bit of a lump in my throat because it manages to hammer home the impact that war can have on a family without actually preaching to you about war being a bad thing, in a similar manner to what Act of Valor does, as I mentioned before.
Medal of Honor plays really well though. The weapons feel chunky and fairly realistically powerful. The only downside to Warfighter is that it lacks the level of gore from the first one. It might sound a bit sadistic saying that I can't blow people's heads off and I can't blow the limbs off, but there's something quite tangible about doing that. Even without blood spraying everywhere, there's something just quite tangible about it that does draw you in quite a bit. So why they choose to remove it is completely lost on us. In terms of the graphics and sound, the Frostbite 2 engine is used to full effect here. Medal of Honor looks good, it sounds amazing, there's no other word for it to be honest. One of the problems though is that the level design can be quite dull and unimpressive, and it gets a little bit boring, but in the context of the game it does work in the way that every realistic shooter is just boring grey village.
Yeah, you see, the dual level design does work in the context of the game, primarily because Medal of Honor doesn't feel like it's trying to be the same level of blockbusting action game that Call of Duty is, so the lack of huge battle zones and ridiculously over-the-top story and set pieces is actually a welcome change. Instead, Warfighter feels plausible, not realistic. You can still take a dozen bullets to the face and shrug it off, but it isn't anywhere near as unbelievable and stupid as Modern Warfare 3, especially the whole Russia invades the whole world thing.
Plausible, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
They're much better than saying realistic.
Yeah, because the level design is based on what would be a realistic sort of Middle Eastern town, so it's not going to be bright and colourful, it's going to be dusty and brown, basically, so it does actually work.
It's not in the middle of what should be a busy airport.
Exactly, yeah. So it doesn't look too bad.
The actual shooting works really well in Warfighter, specifically something I really liked, and I know lots of people don't like it, but I think it's really fun because it means I have to try harder, is that bullet drop from sniper rifles.
Yeah.
There's a fair amount of bullet fall from when you're aiming like full people height above their head and hitting them in the feet. Stuff like that. I really like it. It means I have to try harder. It stops sniping levels just being point-and-click adventure games.
Yeah.
I mean, all they are then would be select, gun, use on man.
Head explodes.
And I like it.
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier about Warfighter's gameplay being a bit surprising. There are a few vehicle-based missions, notably 2 car chases. Happens one through a Middle Eastern market and the another one on Dubai's highways during a sandstorm. I think somebody's watched Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol before they designed that mission anyway. These sections are easily some of the game's high points. They feel very different from a usual FPS, and they're a welcome change of pace.
Yeah, particularly the Dubai one. I mean, the one in the Middle Eastern market's really exciting. But the mission in Dubai actually has a section where the Overwatch Dusty guides you through the streets to avoid other cars. So you've got to duck in undercover while one of the an enemy car drives past, and then you duck out. So it's almost like a stealth mission in a car. It's really cool.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
For once, Warfighter's multiplayer is also worth a mention. It's a little bit confusing at first because the UI isn't particularly user-friendly, but it has quite a cool platoon system, and you can have your own custom Tier 1 badge if you want to. That's a clan system, to those who might be wondering. Different kind of clan system because it can be based on where you're from, so you can fight for a specific country in the overall leaderboard system. It's a class-based system, as I said before, so you've got like heavy weapons and snipers and all that kind of stuff. There's more of one of each class from each Special Forces unit, for example, English SAS or American Delta Force, which is also pretty cool. So when you've got your own characters to pick from out of the list, you can have your entire platoon just SAS, or you can pick and choose which one you think works best or looks the best. It's quite fun to play. It's definitely not Battlefield or COD, but it's decent enough that I've been getting stuck into it quite a bit.
I haven't played the multiplayer yet.
You should, because it's pretty decent. It's just a shame that's one thing actually, it doesn't support split screen multiplayer, which sucks quite a bit actually, because most games do at the moment.
That means that we're going to have to take turns.
Yeah, essentially.
Probably. Because I can't afford it.
In all fairness, as a complete package, Warfighter is definitely a game worth getting. I know it hasn't been critically well received, but it is a vast improvement on the previous one. It's certainly not one of the best FPS games to come out for a while, and because, once again, it's battling against Call of Duty Black Ops 2, it'll likely fall into obscurity. But as I said, with it being such an improvement, I actually can't help but think Danger Close might nail it with the third one.
Cheers for watching, guys. That was Medal of Honor Warfighter. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or requests, feel free to stick them in the comments below.
Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter and subscribe to the channel.
See you later, guys.
See ya. You do know you just give the peace symbol at the end, don't you?
Okay.